I was a kid, that was actually one of the things I wanted to do. I either wanted to be an astronaut or historian. You know what I mean? And I kinda
Really?
still took that yeah, I kinda still took that route because my bachelor's degree is in political science. So it's
Okay.
like when you take political science, they teach you a lot about history because they
Yeah.
kinda connect. Because in order for you to understand politics, you need to understand where it came from. So,
Yeah.
like, they teach you a lot of history. You know what I mean?
Where
So
did you
history
hear about historians? Where did you hear about that as a job?
I heard about that as a job when I was in high school. I never even knew that was a thing, you know what I'm saying? Until my history teacher told me that he got a degree in history. And I was like, "You could
Okay.
get a degree in that?" I thought you just
Right?
read a lot, you know?
And seriously, seriously. And the value of like folks like historians and political science folks, right? It's so obviously it's undervalued in capitalism, but like it's
Mhm.
funny that that's a yeah. I would when you first hear about shit, that's kind of funny how it shakes out. Some people know about fancy shit early, like historians and science sociologists and psychologists. They know about that early.
Yeah.
You and I did not learn about it until way late.
Way later, and exactly, and it was kinda hard to find a degree in my field, but that's when I found out that you kinda have to have the master's, and that's when, political consulting and places pick you up, or you can have a bachelor's, it's just kind of you have to work under a local politician, and then you could build yourself up there, you know what I mean? So I can
Yeah, yeah.
actually put work in my field, that's what I've been looking for, but, it's all good. I'm about to work in insurance in a bit, which is sort of the same thing, so it doesn't matter. Oh, I already
Yeah.
started the recording. Let's go ahead and get it
No,
started.
go for it. No, yeah. No, one more question though. Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, sure.
Have you worked in politics before?
I've worked closely with a politician. I canvassed for her, and I actually still have her number. She's my state representative right now. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
her name is, Dottie Joseph. So
That
she's
work
a
is that work
Mhm.
is crazy. Working in politics is crazy. That's it. That's all I got. All right.
Yeah, we're gonna get into politics. Yeah, we're definitely gonna get into
let's talk
politics.
let's, let's talk about it sometime. Yeah.
Sure, sure. No, no problem. Alright, y'all. So, as you can see, we're having a little conversation here, but this is my guy Chris. I met him on the Black Atheist group chat. This is Atheist Testimonials, where we talk to atheists from a black lens on how they became atheist, or if they were always atheists, how it was growing up in a religious society and them not being a believer. So we have Chris with us. He's gonna introduce himself and who he is, what he does. Go ahead and talk to the people.
Sure. Great. Hi, I'm Chris. What's up, everybody? What were the questions? Two questions. What do I do? What was the
Yeah,
question? Where did I come from?
yeah, pretty much yourself. What you do? How long have you been a non-believer?
Gotcha, gotcha. So yeah, um, they I work in research. Let's start with work stuff, right? So, I work in at a hospital setting, at a university, and research. My role there is to, um, sort of do compliance stuff, right? So, like, people send their studies to my office, and then we make sure that they're on the up and up, right? So we can talk about medicine and vaccine, and sort of drug stuff, over in that space. And that's the thing that consumes my everyday life.
Mhm.
And how did I become an atheist? It was like a
Oh,
college thing.
how long? How long you been one? We'll get into your story on how you became one.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha. Oh, yeah, shit. Since college, so probably like
Oh,
20 years. Yeah, yeah. I went to a Bible school, or went to like a Christian college,
mhm,
and they sort of school you out of Christianity pretty easily there, right? Like, so I think like as soon as you start really thinking about the Bible and people ask you to do something like think about a thing or be critical about it, a lot of us, I think, in this community have sort of let it go. So I'm one of those people. I'm a late bloomer, and
mhm,
so I didn't grow up like in a religious family, but I took myself to church as like a teenager, and I thought it was interesting and cool. And there's a lot of girls over there, so I was interested in that too. And then, there was always something uncomfortable about Christianity for me, right? So there's slavery, there's sort of like slavery issues was always a challenge. There's always the stories of like sort of the Old Testament stories are sort of uncomfortable, right? So like
mhm,
the Adam and Eve story is uncomfortable, the Noah story is uncomfortable, Bathsheba and King David, that's a super uncomfortable story, right? So there
mhm.
was always that. And, it was just a social thing. And then as soon as I sort of left as an adult, I was like, I don't think I like this anymore. And just sort of got out of there.
Right.
And then also, like a lot of people, sort of was in college and was doing a lot of argument stuff. And so I did a lot of debates, sort of on my way out of Christianity. But like, I had access to sort of fancy Christians. And so it was fun for me to do that. And um, I don't know if it was wholesome, but it was a thing that happened, and it sort of like, sort of resolved my any
Conflict.
sort of any challenges or conflict. That's right.
Gotcha. It's really interesting that you mentioned Bible school because a lot of people who I met or who I spoke to online that said that they went to seminary school, it kind of educates you out of the literalism of the Bible because even in seminary school they'll tell you none of this is literal and we don't have evidences that it's any of it's true. And here are all the contradictions, and this will come from pastors. you know, so I
Right.
heard that a lot.
I feel like I wonder if that person gets in trouble at that institution though, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah,
who like 'cause that's controversial language, that'll get kids out of here really, really fast.
real fast.
Because and again, I feel like a late bloomer and I didn't come from a home that was like, here's a book or there's a thing called a university and here's a thing called evidence. There was those words are not used in my house. And so, but there are kids who do have that, growing up, and even a little bit of that will go a long way for them when they're like, look at the Bible and try some evidence on it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. And like when you bring up the Adam and Eve story, I think that was actually my first ever question. That was my first
Mm,
question that I had about the Bible because we read about Adam and Eve, then Cain and Abel, and then Cain killed Abel. So then the next story was, well, Cain found a wife. And that was my first question. I went to my mom and dad, were like 6 and 7.
who
Where
said
did Kane's
it?
wife come from? I
Who
had
was
to be
that?
like
Who did
6
you
or 7.
say?
It's like I had to be like 6 or 7 to have to ask that question. I was like, where did Kane's wife come from? It's really interesting. The more you learn about like the world around you, like I was a student of history. I love history. So the more
Uh-huh.
you learn about that, the less things make sense. And I think for me, you grew up in not a non-religious household, but as you can see, the flag of my background, I'm West Indian, so I grew up in a very religious household,
Yeah.
so those questions were never really asked. So, but then when I started to learn about, Chinese civilization, Indus Valley civilization, civilization from Western Africa, things that
Mhm.
go back and forth years and years and years, I'm like, none of this is in the Bible. So what
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
happening everywhere else? You know?
Right. Right. I think actually, I think the most core thing that I could say about my connection to sort of Christianity, even, and by the way, I should say that it's not that, you know, is not that my family was non-religious. It's that they were just like, they didn't know anything about it. And they just were like, I call myself one of the kinds of Christians, right? But they
Mhm.
didn't care. But for me, it was kind of this sort of connection to history, and so I think there's like I see a good strain of in the Black non-believing community as having this sort of attachment to history, and it's like their starter kit to history, right? And the Bible gives a little bit of that, and then you can start asking around that, right? So when you're asking about yourself, and like we're actually none of this is in the Bible. Like where's the rest of that story, right? And that's the beginning of the search.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. All right, so, um, your family, you said that it's not that they were non-religious, it's they didn't know that much about it. Um,
Yeah. And they never
wh
went to church. Like it was
the
I belonged to a single mom. It's a single white mom. She didn't know anything about anything.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. Also, your mother is a white woman.
That's right.
Gotcha. And, but, your dad, did you have a close relationship with him still?
No, it's
Uh,
so tricky. It's so tricky over that space, right?
mm,
Here I am on the internet being like, my mom didn't tell my father about a thing, right?
mm.
Whatever. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm here now. Let's
Because
do a
I
different.
I know when it comes to black folks who love us some Jesus, so I was kinda
Yeah.
wondering, like, anytime you're around your dad's family, was it like
Mm.
that's when you saw, like, this all the super religious stuff happen, or, were they kinda, like, chill with that too?
No, actually, so that's a really good question for me, right? So even though my mom's white, I grew up. She was in the military, and so we grew up around the world, kind of in ways, right? And so I had a lot of I had a strong black space, and
Mhm.
so the my military black space wasn't super religious at all, right? They were kind of like there wasn't any of that, even though there was like doting moms and good stuff, and good close friends and stuff. There was no there that was like not a thing that showed up at all, right? And so, it wasn't a challenge. But when I think when I got a little bit older, I you sort of in my like early teens, then and again still in black spaces, that that I was like, oh yeah, this religious stuff was super serious to these people, right? Like to us, and we got to do this for real. But that's not what provoked me. Like I was sort of already interested in it, and
There you go.
probably for like sort of again historical reasons. Like, oh, here's some old shit that I never heard of. Let's try it. Let's see what's up.
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha. So it never became, like, an issue with your family when you never had to become out as a non-believer or anything like that, right?
like not with my like mom or my sisters or anything like that. My it was And I had a couple of aunts that I actually used to take myself to church with, right? So when I got interested in church, I had like a Mormon aunt, and then like these are my aunts. I had a Mormon aunt and a sort of evangelical aunt who belonged to sort of the charismatic tradition, right? So which
Mhm,
is like pretty like they have black space features, right? So
mhm,
so I used to take myself to those things, and it I had to a little bit break up with them. The
mhm.
Mormon net was a lot easier. I'm like, you don't even have any black people until like the 80s or whatever, right? And then on the other end, I was like, it's just you guys are just saying weird stuff over there. Like you're just being weird. So yeah. So there was a little bit of a breakup, but not for anybody else, which was
Okay.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. That is nice. All right, cool. So, what in college like triggered that when you actually started to really, really question and figured out that you didn't really believe it anymore? You said you went to a Bible college.
So yeah, I went to not a Bible college, like a just a Christian liberal arts school in
Gotcha.
Seattle. And so I studied classics. So I studied Greek and Latin as an undergrad. And it was that. It was like, hey, have you ever read the Bible in its original languages? And you start reading Paul, and you're like, this isn't Paul. So like when I read the letters, like I think I've read the Bible very, very closely. And when I think about um, the letters from Paul,
Mhm.
they're just very confusing. It's just it just doesn't feel like authentic at all. And I was kind of like, that was my beginning of like, this isn't working for me anymore, kind of thing, right? And so, the Gospels are all fine, I guess. They look refined, I guess. I don't know. And then sort of the early church is very messy, but not in the same way that like the New Testament is. And so it was just, I broke up with it. You know what I mean?
Gotcha, gotcha.
I was like, this isn't working for me. This looks dumb.
Yeah, this looks pretty dope. No, you know what's interesting about that you mentioned Paul's letters is that according to scholars, that's actually confirmed. A lot of those letters didn't actually come from Paul.
Mhm.
You know, as
Yeah.
you know what's interesting, like what's really really ironic. There's actually I think it's in Romans, it's either in Acts or Romans, where is one of Paul's letters. He actually writes to be cognizant because there are foreigners. I mean, there are forgeries of his letters going out his name. He actually warns against forgeries. But you know
Yeah.
what's ironic about that? They found out that that letter is a forgery.
Yeah.
That
No,
wasn't
that's
Paul.
that's sort of the situation, right? So there's kind of this like old sort of old world. So the ancient world is like janky, and it's kind of
Yeah.
and it has a kind of a like, where do you live? Where are you at?
I grew up in South Florida. I'm still in Florida now.
Okay, you're in Florida now, right? So everybody has like a side gig. Everybody has like a hustle.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
In Florida, you gotta have a side hustle or you scamming. It's one of them.
So or yeah, right. In that version, like where I live in Seattle, there's not a lot of that. There's a little bit of scam, but there's like a little bit of side hustle, but not a lot. It's not the culture here, right? But in the
Right.
ancient world, there wasn't even jobs then. Everything actually was a side hustle. And so when you think about like the saying this isn't real about letters and stuff like that, that's just like the norm there. And so like it's hard to actually say what is real there. And good for the historians to be able to determine, the good stuff from the bad. That's like there's a way to do that, as you know. But
Mhm,
like it's hard work and it's very tricky. And so, and again, that's another like layer of like reasons to be skeptical about like stuff from the before, right?
mhm,
So like we have a lot of like writings from that time, like
mhm,
like I don't know, Marcus Aurelius is probably a little bit after that, but there's a bunch of like preserved writings from that time, a little bit before that. That's fine. We have Aristotle and Plato, right? All of that stuff, and like it's pretty well preserved because there's a bunch of copies of that kind of thing, and they're all identical. And then like when you have these like one-offs and two-offs, it's not good history. You know what I mean? Like they're just,
yeah,
or
yeah,
maybe you
exactly.
can say, like, what do you think about that? That's a question for you.
Yeah. What I've told people before, and when they ask me how I view the Bible now, I've always told them that I view it more of as historical fiction because it does tell you things that happened in that area around that time. It mentions the king of Moab, you know what I mean? And we know Moab existed. And
Mm,
then it mentions like Israel and Judah, the two kingdoms of the Israelites. Those did exist. We have archaeological evidence of that. We know King David was a real person, probably, and Solomon was a real person, probably. But it doesn't actually mention the hundreds of kings that came after that, because Israel and Judah existed for at least 500 to 600 years. You see what I'm saying? But we only know about Saul, David, and Solomon. You know what I'm saying? That's all we know about. The thing is, though, we all know these things existed. Now, did King David actually slay a 10-foot tall person? Probably not. You know what I mean? What we got to understand is that around that time, people didn't really know how to explain height. And at the end of the day, LeBron James is like what, 6'8", right?
He's
Right?
pretty much 10 feet tall. I'm pretty sure he's about 10 feet tall. Like real talk. I'll give
Yeah,
it to him.
yeah, exactly. So LeBron James is about 6'8". What's his name? Shaq is about 7'1". So
Yeah.
me,
Go.
I'm
Jack,
pretty
go.
small.
I put that on
Huh?
there.
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
just
I'm a pretty small guy. I'm about 5'5" on a good day. You feel
okay.
me? You know what I'm saying? I'm 5'6" with Timberlands on. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So it's like it's one of those things. So I'm a
I'll
pretty
give it to you.
small guy. And around the time they like when they kind of look back at the genetics around that time, David was probably around the same height as me, around 5'5", 5'6". A 7 foot tall man is gonna be a giant. You see what I'm saying?
Uh,
So it's like that's how they're going to explain it, but by then. But at the end of the day, what I've always said is that this is more historical fiction, because I look at it as more of like the Iliad, the Odyssey, and Spider-Man comics. Like,
yeah.
for example, New York exists, Manhattan exists, Queens exists. I'm pretty sure if you go to a phone book in Manhattan right now, you will find a Peter Parker. Most likely, I'm pretty sure you'll find that. Does that mean
Living with,
that
living with his aunt and uncle.
exactly living with his aunt and uncle? You'll probably find that. Does
Yeah.
that mean that that same Peter Parker is putting on a mask and has spider powers to lift over a bust over his head and shoot webs out his fingers? No,
I
it
mean,
doesn't mean that. You know?
it, it's on Instagram. No, you're right
Yeah.
about that. Yeah, of course not. Yeah. Like, right. That's just like an improbable. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So we have like a very normal, we understand what reality can and sort of cannot do, right? And, to push on that is pretty hard. Right? So people were like, I live in a place where there's a lot of water, and when whales come around, that's not strange for us. But if people were like, "You live around whales," they're like, "Yeah," and I tell like New Yorkers, I'm like, "Yeah, we sleep with bears out here in Seattle. That's how we do it." And they don't know anything about the outdoors in New York, right? Um, and that's the situation, right? Like everybody's people's lives are, sort of varied in these good ways, but everybody doesn't know about everybody's thing, and that's fine. But like, nobody's shocked by sort of like the reality of things. And somebody's like, married cried the Mary statue cried in Spain, right? And you're like, what? What
Mhm.
is that? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
exactly. Then you find out that there's actually a whole link to it that makes you cry. It's like, come on, y'all. We knew that was gonna we knew that was
but
coming.
it's
You know what I'm
sewer
saying?
water. Isn't that
Yeah,
sewer water too? Wasn't it?
it's still
Is that
water. Yeah,
it?
still water's crap. You know what I mean? So it's like, and I've always told people like this is how I kind of view it, but I understand that it can be useful for like a historical narrative to understand what were the people doing and believed in that time, because they might not have written it down. So we can use it as a reference, a point of reference, which is fine. But to take it as literal history, like I said before, the Indus Valley civilization existed thousands of years before Abraham. None of that is in the Bible. So
Yeah,
we can't use it as a reference point for all of history. We can use it as a reference point for that local history. Sure,
right.
you know what I'm saying? Let's hear history of the Levant, a little bit of Ethiopian Egypt. Sure. I don't doubt that. But to say that it's a historical narrative book,
Yeah.
no, you know what I'm saying? Like it has people literally talking to donkeys, flying up into the sky, prophets with actual Balaam, no, Balaam, the prophet Balaam actually sending a pillar of fire down to that nah, bro. You feel me? That's just not happening. It's just not. So
Yeah.
it's like that's always told people that's how I actually view the Bible now.
No, I think here's the thing about it. It's like I wouldn't even be mad if they're like, look, these are our stories. If somebody were like, this is our stories, and we keep them over here, it's super fine. Like I love that for them. Like I'm super happy, and I really have a deep appreciation for tradition and sort of kinds of other, sort of other people's tradition. Up here we have Native Americans who live, who are living, sort of thing. I understand you guys don't have them out there, or some version of that, but like there's I know.
We have two tribes.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. No, but like, and you sort of can't agree with them about metaphysical things,
Mhm.
but but I'm super thoughtful about their tradition and that this is their space, and I want to, sort of honor that. And the places that I take my kids to, which are sort of outdoorsy, are as my son is texting me right now. I'll holler at you later, boy. Sorry about that.
Mhm,
Is are their lands, and I want to tell them about their stories when we're around and what the things we used to do when we're going on our hike, and they like that stuff, right? And we see sort of some monuments about, sort of as odes to those and stuff, but like there's all these great traditions that are around us, right? There's like sort of immigrant traditions from white people, like Germans coming across like Minnesota, and sort of those are kind of nice stories and stuff. And then there's great traditions of sort of uh people, uh and both indigenous people from the Southwest who have worked lots of times here, and they're just great traditions, and people can belong to all of those things on, out here on the West Coast, right? And I can imagine like where you're at, there's a bunch of other older traditions
mhm,
that people can belong to, and that's rich and fine. But then there's like, are things fact, right?
mhm,
And we're like, well, you know um if we destroyed your thing, if we destroyed all the information related to like, if we destroyed all of the sort of religious texts, for example,
mhm,
and then we destroyed all of the sort of science texts at the
mhm.
same time, literally only one of those would pop up in about 200 or 300 years if everybody here was sort of still around. And the other book that doesn't pop up like itself would be some weirdo version, would be like an altered state. And, and so like that's, and I like that, sort of as a comparison between, what we're trying to do out here.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and just like you, how you were saying, like there are different folklores and ways of living. We have two Native American tribes here, the Seminoles and the Miccosukee. Yeah, I mean the
Okay.
Miccosukee own they own a casino here, so all of them
Okay.
is driving Range Rovers and shit. You know what I'm saying? So that's them. And then
I
and
look
then
forward to my Native friends driving Rovers. I want them to all be driving Range Rovers. I'm like, man, because I'm thinking like s- super rich Asians is what I want to see natives. And
yeah, that's what I want to see for Native Americans as well. You know, I want to see that for us too, but I want to see the natives. You know what I mean? And yeah, the Seminoles. I never been to their reservation, but I definitely want to go one day. So like, yeah, I definitely respect all the traditions and everything like that. You feel what I'm saying? But like I've always said, we get incredible stories from like Japanese folklore. Like for example, like I was a fan of Naruto growing up, right? It wasn't
okay,
until later that it wasn't until later that I found out that names like Orochimaru, Tsunade, those are from Japanese mythology. I never knew that. You know what I'm saying? And it's
hmm
like mythology, you know what I'm saying? And I've learned that at the end of the day, you can create incredible stories from mythologies. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we get it from Greek mythology and Norse mythology all the time. So why not just get it from the Bible too? You know what I mean? We could create fantastic. My favorite movies growing up was The Prince of Egypt. That was
okay.
one of my favorite movies growing up. That's a black movie, okay? That is a black movie because that soundtrack,
That's interesting.
yeah, it's a black movie because that soundtrack and that melanin that they give those people, those is
Uh-huh.
black people. You know what I'm saying? The
Oh,
Egyptians in that movie was
they're like,
black. Moses in that
the
movie
only way
was
that the
black.
Americans will understand the stories if they're black. Got it. That was
Exactly.
the mission.
Listen, the Egyptians in that movie was black. Moses in that movie was black. The soundtrack was made by black folks. That's a black movie. I don't care what nobody say.
I'm with it. I'm with it. Okay.
Yeah. So it's
I
like
like
we could create incredible stories from these things. So why not from the Bible? And that's why I kind of do like what we were talking about before. I kind of get not upset, but kind of like saddened in the fact that there are incredible stories out of Africa that we never see.
it.
The
Yeah.
Epic of Mwindo,
Mhm.
amazing story. You know what I mean? The Moonchild from South Africa, amazing
Mhm.
story. You know what I'm saying? Like it's Anansi's Tales, amazing stories, but we never see them. You know what I mean? And that's always been a shame for me. We kind of did get off a tangent. I'm sorry. we kind of went on a tangent.
No, 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 I like it. I like it. Yeah, no, I like it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think history is a huge part of this discussion, though. I think.
It is. It really is because if you look at history,
Yeah.
a lot of
No.
people would say that Christianity was in Africa before it was in Europe. Number one, that's wrong. But number two, we didn't descend from them. That wasn't over in Ethiopia. We descended from Yoruba land. We descended from Ibu land. We descended from the Akan people, the Bakanga people. That's who we descended from. We didn't
Mhm.
descend from Ethiopians. You know what I mean? We didn't have Christianity. They did. So it's
Yeah.
like we can't just sit here and pretend that Ethiopia represents all of Africa because it doesn't. Even we don't represent all of Africa. So it's like is a huge land, and we have to recognize that the majority of the reason why we still have this is because our ancestors were it was for our ancestors. That's the truth, you know.
Yeah, I think that's 100% fact. I think that fight's still going on. There's still like a struggle about that. Like,
Mm,
right? So, like in Niger, I don't think the US military is allowed to be there anymore as of a couple of days ago, or maybe that's happening right now. That's still
mm,
a struggle that's happening. And like you sort of that's underneath even, sort of the colonialism that's, that. But like
mm,
there's still this sort of like the Berbers were around back then, right? So like, and you have black leaders of, sort of the early church, right? And there's a black tradition in the sort of a North African tradition, sort of
mm.
in the Roman Empire and early Christianity, right? So of course there's like there's you're right. There's a bunch of that, but it's not definitely where we come. There's not from the stolen people, not
Yeah,
descendants of slaves. We have a lot of connection to that for sure. Yeah.
look, and the thing is, there's a black saint, so it's like I don't mind that there are black people who are Christian. There's a black saint. He's from Ethiopia.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
I think
saying?
there's a
So
bunch. Yeah, there's several of them.
yeah, exactly. So I get it, but it's like at the end of the day, we have to recognize that this is still a foreign concept. You know what I mean? And that's what really one of the things that actually gets to be like traditionalism versus Christianity, because I saw a jubilee just the other day of Africans talking when it was the
Hmm.
Christians and the traditionalists, and they were talking about which one is better path for Africa, and the way that these Africans defend Christianity to the death of them. And it's like this was forced upon us, and I don't understand. The only my issue with Christianity being in Africa is that when it destroys our traditionalism, because it doesn't do that anywhere else. If you look at any other place where Christianity exists, such as Korea, such as Japan, such as Mexico, they've kept their traditions. They've kept all of it. You know, I mean, Koreans still, have the statues. They still have Japanese Christians still have Shinto shrines and everything like that.
Yeah,
Mexicans
they're
still
still doing
do.
both things.
Exactly. They still do Dia de las Muertas,
Yeah.
Day of the Dead. They
Yeah.
still do all that.
But
It's
that's
only
I
black
mean
that
that's
we destroy our traditions, and I don't get that.
That's a hard one though for me because I think that, even those traditions themselves have dates and they're not, they may or may not, they're not ancient, they're not embedded in us, right? So that what humans are up to is always, it has a date, just like we do, And so it's kind of tricky to be like which ones should be preserved and like what's the trajectory of them up to. I think, you know, I I think I had this. I'm easy on Buddhism. I think a lot of sort of non-believers are because they're like not in the space. They're like, I keep my shit quiet. I build a temple that's over here. You'll never even you can walk by it and never see it, right? And that happens, for sure in Buddhism, in the United States. And I like that. And it doesn't that part, and it doesn't sort of infringe on on the shared spaces. But then
Yes.
there's like some kinds of religious folks, and not just religious folks, but there are some kinds of religions by nature who must impinge upon on the shared space in the
Mhm.
public shared space, and they make it so tricky. And people fight. And we literally there's been a lot of fights about it. Things called wars, like like all of them, right? It's just
Mhm.
people try to be in the shared space more that or I should say treating the shared space unfairly,
Mhm.
and that's what's been the problem. And so there's a way to like be religious, I think, but this ain't,
Yeah, exactly.
what we're working with. And so, and again, like you know, and so we have to, our traditions only go back so far,
Mhm.
right? And so one of the things that I think that happens to us Western, sort of Americans is that I see sort of an innocent version for white people is like, all right, I'm Nordic, and they reach back to their Scandinavian roots, and
Mhm.
they're like, I'm connected to this land, and they do the sort of thing. They're like, they do the third or fourth, fifth generation reach back to their country kind of thing, and it's just weird.
Mhm.
There's no way for it to be authentic kind of stuff, and I worry about that. Like, can we ever get like, is there like a way for Black Americans to sort of ever get back? Is a question that's provoked from that, but like,
I mean,
I get.
I think there is, because what's happening in Haiti right now is that a lot of the young generation are reaching back to the traditions, because they're seeing that a lot of young Haitians right now are very critical of the church, especially the Catholic Church, because about 50 to 60% of Haiti is Catholic. They're very critical of the Catholic Church, because not only do they see the abuse that came from there, unfortunately happens down, what happened here in America happened down there too. So they're very critical of the church right now, but they also see that the Pope never comes to Haiti, right? And
Mhm,
not only that, the Archdiocese of Haiti has plenty of money. Like
mhm,
the bishop that runs the Archdiocese, he rolls around in Mercedes and Range Rovers down there, and he lives in the mountains. He doesn't live
mm,
where all the other people live. He doesn't live in the valley. He lives in the mountains. Like
right.
here's one thing that people don't understand about Haiti, right? Is a country of 12 million people. So there's going to be areas where it's basically you can't tell the difference between America and Haiti. You know what I'm saying? Like if
Right.
let's say if I were to give you a Xanax and put you on a flight and send you over to Haiti and like tell you that hey, we're in Paris right now, you'll probably believe me because like they speak in French. You know what I'm saying? I'm telling you, they speak in French. There's a design district there. You'll be like, we're in a very black part of Paris, aren't we? You know what I'm saying? But it's
I'm not sure, like, have I
kinda.
been to the black part? I've never been to the black part of Paris. I love to
Yeah,
go to I've been to Paris a bunch of times, and I've never found the black part of Paris.
you never
Do you
okay.
know?
There is a black part. My sister's been there. They said it's all Africans there. And what's crazy about it is that they understand us. Africans understand Creole. Like,
Oh, yeah,
yes,
yeah,
it's
oh, no doubt about it. Yeah, yeah. No, like, francophone is francophone, right? That's the great thing
yeah,
about French. It's slangy as fuck. French is French is slangy
yeah.
and yeah, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like they're very, very critical of it. And a lot of them started saying that, how did we actually get independence in the first place? How did we become the first black
Mm,
republic? We did it through
right.
a voodoo ceremony. So they started going back to their traditions of saying, you know what, this is what our ancestors did, and this is what protected us before. So we're gonna go back to this. You know what I mean? Because it's like everything else that we've been doing so far hasn't worked. We've been praying for 100 and something odd years, and we're still in chaos. You know what I'm saying? This prayer stuff
Yeah.
isn't working for us. Let's do something else. So
You
a
know,
lot of young Haitians are doing that now.
so are they like sort of like wait, so just to be clear, are they going back to like a more fundamentalist sort of belief structure kind of thing? Or are they just or are they like this is all dumb, let's get out of here and let's do a sort of, or is it turning into sort of a secular
They're
situation?
they're doing more of the voodoo traditions now, basically.
Okay, so they're
They're
reaching back to the older. Okay.
they're reaching back to
Okay.
the older traditions, exactly. Like just like how we did back in Africa and everything like that, because that's where it came from. So they're reaching
Mhm.
back to doing that instead of being, strict Christians, L'église l'école laïque. That's a thing that we have in Haiti. L'église
Yeah,
l'école laïque means church, school, home.
yeah,
L'église,
yeah, yeah,
l'école, la church, school, home.
yeah.
That's what it means, and I was raised in that. I was raised in that way too. In a lot of ways, it did help. I ain't gonna lie. It keeps you disciplined. It really does. Because if you just go to school and you go home, you're not in trouble on the street. So it does
Yeah.
keep you disciplined, but it's a
I'm
very
like,
strict way to live.
yeah, think about that. But, like, question for you, like, what do you think that discipline was for? Like, they're like, we want you to have this discipline to go to trade school, or
Uh,
what?
if you're a West Indian, if you're a West Indian or West African, your parents always tell you three professions: doctor, lawyer, engineer. Those are the
So everybody
three.
was gonna be a professional.
Everybody needs to be a professional, those three professions. And you can't do that if you're not disciplined. So that's why they instill in us doctor, lawyer, engineer. Now, of course, there's a lot of, especially if you come to Florida,
Yeah, yeah.
if you meet a black nurse, she's probably going to be Haitian or Jamaican. That's
Yeah,
just a
yeah,
thing,
no,
you know.
yeah. A couple jobs ago, I was in Jackson. I was at the University of Mississippi Medical Center at my work, and I was a little bit surprised at the amount of sort of Caribbean sort of professionals there, right? So there are physicians. So actually thinking, I didn't meet any sort of nurses that were sort of from the Caribbean, but a handful of physicians and a couple of board members. There was a sprinkle of people, and I was surprised by that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's really instilled in us if we're gonna when they move to America, because it's like when what's promoted around the world, especially over in Haiti, is that education is everything. So if you move to America, you get the education to be this professional and everything like that. So it's like
yeah.
they really push that. They really push, okay, getting your education. But then when we get over here, then we figured out, hold on, a plumber can make as much as a nurse does. So let me just be a plumber, you feel me? So
Really?
do
Oh
that.
yeah, as much. Oh yeah, yeah. Good for, yeah. I mean, like, yeah, yeah. Nurses and plumbers are part of the same class. Those are trades. That's the trade community, right? Like
Hey,
that's what
yeah,
that is. That's they like. They follow a set of rules and regulations. Not just legal, but like their own things. Oh, this is what we're up to.
exactly.
Whereas like physicians, for example, they're like, I'll prescribe you a drug and it's not even approved for that. That's a different category of
Different
people, right?
category of people.
Um, yeah.
Yo, I want to get. I'm sorry, we went like on a 20-minute
We sure
tangent.
did. I know. I'm like, can we start over? Redo. Can we get a redo?
No, no, no. It's all good. It's all good. It's good. This how it rolls. This how it usually rolls. This how it usually rolls. It's
I'm
all
waiting for
freestyle.
these. I'm waiting for these deer to attack me over here. There's like a group of deer over here. They're
I,
eating
I did
grass.
I did see a few go in your background. I was like, is that a
Mhm.
video or what? You know? Yeah, but yeah, it's all good. No, no, this is how my interviews roll. It's all good. But
Very well.
let me ask you. So I know like non-belief didn't affect your relationships with family or friends. Now, as far as romantic partners, because
Mm,
with me, that was a thing. You know, what I mean, like I said, black people love them some Jesus. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
And I'm from a West Indian community, so a lot of the people that I ran into were either from the West Indian community or they were African Americans. And
Right.
every single time it was always, we can't do anything serious, but you come over on Saturdays though. You know what I'm saying? So it got to a point where I got tired of that because it's like, I actually want companionship. So it did become a problem for me. Now, luckily, I got my fiance now. She's a African traditional religion practitioner. They don't care about that at all.
That's,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying? So she's fine with it. She doesn't care. She does her ceremonies. She prays her ancestors. I join sometime because it's fun, and it's all good and well. But I know for me and some from other fellas I spoke to, it was always an issue.
Mhm.
Was that ever an issue for you in the dating world?
Yeah, it is. It is an issue. It has been an issue for sure. Like obviously, I mean, like we're like the black community is super religious. Like we're I think still probably the most religious community, sort of by race here. So like
Yeah.
it's definitely a challenge, right? But it's a thing. But now, I mean, I'm like in my 40s now, right? So like it's just a thing you clear up early, and if it is, and if that's a challenge for them, like so, I think that people sort of navigate that space, right, in different ways. And for some of them, it's a deal breaker for sure, right? It's a thing I for sure put it out there, when I'm in my dating space, like I'm a non-believer, right? And I'll say non-believer because it's nicer. That's a nice
Not the way.
version of like, I'm an atheist. People think atheist is a cuss word. Atheist, like, yeah, I don't know why, but atheist is like the most simple thing in the fucking world, but like people think
Mhm,
it's a cuss word. So anyway, non-believer.
mhm,
And if that sounds, if that sounds like a strange, way to put it or whatever, like I don't get that credit anyway. And so yeah, just say about it. And people too do bring it up when I've been in dating spaces. People will bring it up and they're like, "What does that mean?" And I'm like, I don't, like I don't know if you say sin, I don't know what you're talking about. If
mhm,
you like, I don't know what that even means. If you want to talk about a soul, if you could show me where that is, like I'm pretty open to my doors open, but I don't know any of those things are, and that's where it's at. But if you want to, and so it works out in one of two ways. They either want to convince you, which it never works out, you know,
mhm,
or it's fine and they just do their thing over in that space. And it can be like a rift. But living in the Pacific Northwest, which is a very unchurched space, it's not that bad up here. So like, so it's a trade. Like the other thing though too is that there's not a lot of black people up here. So
mhm.
that's the hard part. That's the much harder part.
That's the much harder. Yeah, is that
Yeah,
exactly?
yeah. The non-believers are everywhere, but finding one of us is the tricky. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really a needle in the haystack. Yeah, what I mean. Like me, I'm around plenty of black people, but finding one that's not
Yeah.
gonna care, it's needle in the haystack. You know what I mean? They all care, and
Yeah.
it's always a thing because it's like with me, it always like annoyed me to the point where I'm like, y'all understand that I have feelings and I want compassion too, right? I don't want to just be used. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? And it's kind of with me, it came to a point where I was kind of like, do y'all understand that we actually feel things or we want to have I kind of realized that with a lot of theists, they believe that God is love itself. So if you don't believe in that, you must not believe in love, period. So if you don't believe
Right.
in love, period, that must mean you just want sex. I'm gonna give you that until I can actually find something that's real. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
I like that's not true. That's not what we actually think. We do know love exists. You know what I'm saying? We just don't tie it to this entity that you say. And I had to
Yeah.
explain that to somebody, you know what I'm saying? Because I actually liked her. I actually did like her. And I was like, yo, I believe in love. I just don't tie it to this thing that you say exists. But of course, it
Yeah.
didn't work. He said we can't work out. I said, all right, cool, screw it. Yeah, I mean, it did make me sad, but it's like, at the end of the day, I probably wouldn't have met my fiance now if she didn't end it, you know?
Yeah. No, isn't that I find that to be super strange to think that there's like are we so dehumanized in these people's spaces that we're like we don't have things like feelings or like, sort of love or we're not inspired. People ask me a lot. I actually got this question the other day. Somebody asked me like what makes you sort of what what provokes you to be in awe? And I was like, I can name like 50 things right now. Like I don't live in awe. Like, but there are things that I can look to. I look up at the sky very, very regularly
Mhm.
and it's not always clear here in the Pacific Northwest. We got rain, but like when I can see it, there's awe. Anytime I can see, and that's been my whole life. Like it's there's a bunch of awe-inspiring things. Like there's porpoises and whales out here, and that's awe-inspiring. It's not hard. Then none of that is hard, and they're like really. And I don't know what connected there or whatever. But super, super strange that they're
Really
that
strange.
we're not this somehow don't have the human capacities. You know what I mean? Like I think
Yeah,
that's and when if I hear you correctly, like there's this attribution like we don't have all the human capacities, which is like where what? I'm super and like and I'm actually happy to sort of act surprised and outraged about that. Like why
mhm.
would you think I don't have that? It's like one time somebody told me that black people can say the word aluminum, and I was like, what? Where did you hear that?
Where did you hear that? Where's that
And
come
then I'm
from?
like, yeah, what?
It's
And
it
why would you?
it's
Yeah,
whenever I hear misconceptions about atheists, I'm like, where did that come from? Like
yeah,
who taught you these things? Who told you that? You know what I
yeah.
mean? And it's the same conversation I have when people talk about evolution, where the whole came from monkeys thing. And I
Mm,
always ask them, where did you hear that from? Where did that actually come from? Like who actually
mm.
told that? You know, that's what I've started asking before. I was like,
You can
what do you
find out who that is.
hmm?
You can there's a answer to that question. Like who's the first person to say I don't see any monkeys turning into humans. And I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure it's from the court case. Like the whatever the court case between that school teacher and the
yeah,
fancy preacher guy. It was
yeah.
in that he did it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Ken
that's where that
Mrs.
came
Miller,
from.
that's where it came from. Yeah, and
That's
and
right.
and it's like, where do y'all where does this come from? Like, it's so confusing. I never really understood it. People still confuse agnosticism and atheism. Like, it's really weird. It's strange out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, I
and
was
you
like,
know what? Actually, can we talk about that for a second?
yeah,
So
sure.
I haven't said this before, but like my training is in philosophy. Like my graduate training is in philosophy,
Mhm,
and so I did kind of a dual program, right? So one of them where spent a lot of time thinking about epistemology, right? And the other one I spent a lot of time thinking sort of about sort of theory, like sort of how you go from one theory to another, right? So some sort of sociology of knowledge kind of sort of thing, and you get a lot of like sort of between the two. I have a bunch of ideas about um, sort of about the knowledge between agnosticism and atheism, right?
mhm.
Because and yeah, is that all right? Can we do that?
Say it again?
Yeah, would it be all right if we got into that space? Like, what do you think about like how do you like how would you fire away with the like the difference between like, agnosticism and sort of atheism a little bit?
Oh, okay, okay. I got you. Well, I always told people this: you can be both. You know what I mean? Because agnosticism, as far as I understand, deals with knowledge, and atheism and theism deals with belief. So, if someone were to ask me straight up, "Hey, does God exist?" I'll be like, "I don't know. I really don't." Especially with it's going to depend on your definition. If your definition of God is a bearded man in the sky, then no, because we've been to the sky. We know there's no bearded man up there. But if you're going to be like, God is some entity that exists beyond space and time, and I'm gonna be like, I don't know if that exists. That's not even coherent to me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Because what exactly is outside of space and time, outside of reality?
right.
That makes no sense to me. So that's not even a coherent thing. So, but if you're telling me that's an actual thing, I'm gonna be like, I don't know. I don't know if that's real. But
Yeah,
if they're gonna ask me, do I believe in one or do I believe in this concept? I'm gonna be like, no, I don't believe that. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Now, I don't know if you're right about what this concept is, but if you're gonna ask me if I accept that as true, I'm gonna be like, no, I don't believe that. You know what I mean? Because you're telling me that this exists, but there's no way for you to justify that. Just like you can't justify leprechauns or unicorns. You know what I'm saying?
hmm
So it's like that's what I'll tell people. I'm agnostic atheist. I don't
yeah,
know if a God exists or not. One could. I just don't know it yet.
yeah.
However, if you're gonna ask me if I actually have a belief in one, I'm gonna tell you no. Just like I don't have a belief in Santa Claus.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I like that answer. I like how it touches upon like the sort of the knowledge statuses that we can have about things like this, right? And I really appreciate the coherence idea, right? So like, and I think it's a really good. So as a primer, I'll like taking that as a primer. I'll say something like this: if if a conception of God is incoherent, I should my door is shut on stuff like that. Like it just doesn't. It cannot pass any. There's just no things like that. All of
Mhm,
the things are coherent that exist, right? So we either that there's nothing sort of not understandable in some sort of way. We're not good at everything, so being detectable is kind of a question, but there's no magic out there, right? So but if your idea, so barring that, if your idea doesn't make any sense at all, like that's why I call myself an atheist and not an agnostic, because all the things that I hear about gods
mhm,
don't make any sense, and I don't think any of them can make sense. I've heard,
mhm.
and I've spent a little bit of time thinking about that. That's what I was doing in in like sort of Jesus college, was sort of like being like, can anybody here put one together that like works? You know, and that's really hard, by the way. And like I do not I am sassy towards religion, and I'm very critical of like religious ideas, especially ethical ideas.
Mhm.
Um they're just but I'm happy to understand that their challenge, and sort of putting together something like a coherent God idea, or sort of putting together, sort of just whatever you want to do, whatever sort of social organizing thing you're trying to do,
Mhm.
is very, very hard work. So good, get them, killer. But
Yeah.
I don't, they're not, it's nothing, there's nothing, I don't see anything
Gotcha.
that would,
I'm really glad that you have a primer in philosophy because I've actually been looking for that. Actually wanted to get into a kind of a not really a tangent, but it kind of connects to it. Me, whenever I delve into what I would call atheist culture, even though most people would say that atheists don't have a culture, it's just a position. But I think that we do kind of have a culture within ourselves because we're a group of people who don't believe who reject a certain position, but we build like framings and philosophies and a worldview around it. So I do,
yeah,
and we have organizations around it. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And we have educators and comedians around it. So there is a sort of culture that exists around it. We make memes around it. You
yeah,
know what I'm saying? So there
totally,
is kind
yeah,
of a culture around atheism that does kind of exist. It's still nebulous, but it kind of exists.
yeah,
However,
strongly.
whenever I delve into it, I notice something. Me, you, Mandisa Thomas, people like that, we're not exactly visible, are we? You know what I'm saying? Like, think about the big atheist people. You have, the Four Horsemen. You
Mhm,
have the atheist community of Austin. You have, American atheists. You have the Satanic Temple, places like that. That doesn't exactly have me and you in there, does it? You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
no,
For us, it's like it's organizations like like Black Non-Believers.
right,
There's an organization that I know about, Haitian Free Thinkers. You know what I'm saying? There's that. You know what I'm saying? I think there's a group called Nigerian Atheists. There's those exist. You know what I'm saying?
uh-huh.
But when you go into, like, for example, one of my favorite YouTubers is someone called Genetically Modified Skeptic. I love him.
Oh,
Great, right? Yeah,
okay,
he's a white kid. Great,
okay,
great. But he actually did a video on atheist culture, right? When he went into the section about organizations, he didn't mention anything about Black non-believers, anything about
mm,
Black skeptics, any of those Black organizations that exist. He didn't mention any of them. You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
And then I went to another channel that talks about religion and denominations and something about atheist denominations, but it's not really a denomination. It's just like organizations that exist around it.
right,
Black non-believers not mentioned. Black
yeah,
skeptics not mentioned. Black American atheists not mentioned. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we're not visible. You know what I'm saying? So like I've always said, the four horsemen, they already have their problems already because they're straight white males. They're gonna
mhm.
have there's gonna be issues there. And they
Plus one
because
of
they
them
see
died.
plus one of them died, exactly. And they see everything from a straight white male point of view. Now I'm a straight black male, but I still have a different point of view from a straight white male. You know what I'm saying? I've always felt that we should have our own kind of four horsemen. I will call it the cookout. You know what I'm saying? That's what I would call it. I'll call it the
Right.
cookout. But I always felt
Uh-huh.
that we should have it, but not a lot of us are really trained in philosophy, which needs to happen. You know what I'm saying? Like, for
Mhm,
example, the first time I ran into hard solipsism, I didn't know how to
mhm.
answer it. Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I had to get educated in hard solipsism before I can answer it. You know what I'm saying? So you being trained in philosophy, you got to be one of the boys who in the cookout. You know what I'm saying? You got to be part of the cookout because I'm trying to have that. I'm not gonna lie. I'm trying to have us like Black atheists be a lot more visible because I think we should be. And that was gonna be my. I'm sorry that I preambled all this, but that
No,
was
no,
gonna be
that's good.
that's gonna be my question for you. Like, do you think like us as Black atheists, us not having that visibility, should we be a lot more, for lack of a better word, aggressive with our visibility, or how do you think we should go about this?
Yeah, that's a really hard one. That is, it's true. I feel sort of. I listen to a bunch of sort of atheist sort of podcasts, and I've never see our shit, and I'm like, oh, like, and like, yeah, there's nothing. There's not even what I would call a sprinkle. There's Mendes has been, Mendes has gotten mentioned on podcasts, but that I
Exactly.
listen to, but like
I'm,
not
I'm,
regularly.
I-
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm gonna let you keep going. That's actually part of the reason why I started this whole series.
Mhm.
That's why I started this, so we can be visible. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. What you were saying?
No, I really appreciate that. Yeah, it is, and I feel super invisible. I'm not, and I sort of by disposition I enjoy that a little bit. Like I kind of like the sort of down lowness.
Mhm.
Um, because I know that if we were like a group, there'd be a bunch of stuff. And like I like the community. I like the BA community a lot. Like the regular interactors, there's cluster, there's a good chunk of people, and they're thoughtful, and we're varied, and we're we're hetero. We're literally, we're hetero, and we're also like we're all of the LGBTQ community, and there's kind of this sort of sort of enjoyment, sort of this basic sort of thing that we get. And you know what it is, I think, is because it's sort of our ethic, and the ethic that sort of people are always asking us about as non-believers is like, if you're a non-believer, if you don't believe in God, who gives us all the rules, what we should do,
Mhm.
what would you say you are? And the answer is something like, we're very humanist, and we care about each other, and we care about the well-being of others, and we're not interested in suffering. That's not funny to us. We want people to enjoy stuff, so good, get all the sex you want from everybody who consents to the thing to do it with, like all of the good stuff, and but not in a basic, sort of pleasurable way. Like everybody wants to have rich existences, and so like, sort of I think of this community as going around sort of living and sort of being that, and struggling in normal human ways, but sort of basically being that, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it doesn't seem like a big challenge for us to know what that is. We don't go being like, "Which did you do something good today?" Like, we don't. Our interactions are very sort of different than sort of other communities, I think.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's what I wanted to say too. When it comes to, we're very humanist, right? And
Yeah.
when it comes to humanism, like from the white lens is basically from what I've heard, and it's not a problem because I agree with it. From their lens is all about human well-being, right? And but that and that's cool because I do agree with that. But I'll also add this, not just human well-being, but empathy. You know what I'm saying? Because that's what I think the baseline of our ethics that I've seen from Black non-believers is empathy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want this person to suffer. I don't want this person to feel bad. I don't want this person to live a bad life. I don't want this person to not have rights because I don't want my rights taken away. It's the
Right.
baseline for us is empathy. Yeah, you feel what I'm saying? And then we
Yeah.
build upon that with human well-being, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think
Yeah.
that type of diverse thought is what's missing from the atheist community because it's ran by straight white people. You know what I'm saying? And that's not a
Mm.
problem. It's not a problem to be white, not a problem to be straight, not a problem to be a male. Those are not issues, but because of that, you're going to see things from one perspective. You're not going to get
Mhm.
diversity of thought. You know what I'm saying? Like right now, it's atheism is centered. The viewpoint is centered around white men. And like I said,
Mm.
it's cool that you're a white man. You can't help that. I can't fight you because you white. Like what am I gonna do? Square
I
up?
can.
Like
I do. I'm not. I'm the bad stuff.
you know what I mean? But that's the thing. Like, we don't have a problem with that. The issue is that you're going to see the world from a different lens than we're gonna see it. And we need to
Mm.
have a diversity of thought. That's always been my thing. What do you think?
That's an interesting thing. I'm not sure that I'm super clued into like what white atheists as leadership are thinking about. To be perfectly honest with you, like I know that there's been like problems with the guy named Silverman. Like I actually don't know who the bosses of atheism are anymore. I think I've been
The
just
boss.
out of that space, right? So in my podcast that I listen to, they're just it's commentary, it's jokes, it's it's stuff like that, and but I don't know. There's no boss of atheism. Man, I'm a boss of atheism. How about that? Like, you know, like I don't know, like what that even means. And right, so whoever's defending us to
Mm.
who, I don't know what and what that is, right? Because I've done debates, I've done big kid debates, um, and and there's not that exchange is, you know, it's an interesting sort of intellectual sort of masturbation sort of thing, but it's not fruitful. It's not that fruitful to people, and so like when I got done doing that, I was like, man, whatever. I'm just gonna go mind my sort of business. There's not a lot of fruit over there to be had. I'm like not trying to fight you know, sort of. I'm not trying to be a, you know, go around making some fight. But for sure, though, that in my world, but sort of in sort of medicine or sort of in researchy spaces, I'm having the sort of culture. I'm having those culture wars, or I'm participating in the culture wars where, like, you know, we are like we're not interrupting women in the middle of the board meeting, right? Like we're not having any behavior like that, and we're not having a sort of other kinds of things that go on that. And by the way, like while I'm sort of inviting all these other sort of you know, sort of new social rules that people should be taking, which is good for everybody, I'm also inserting ours too. And like, no, we're not invoking gods. What are you talking about? We're not praying before a scientific meeting we're about to have. Who would do that?
Yeah, exactly.
Like I'll protest about that stuff loudly, and it works pretty easily. You just have to be like, let's dumb, that's dumb.
Yeah, yeah,
and
exactly.
and it's okay to say that's dumb, by the
Yeah.
way. Like people should say that's dumb, but just don't do pretend stuff like when we're about to do serious adult stuff. Like there's nothing wrong with that. And here's the thing, like I don't, and if it's off-putting, I don't know. I don't care. Because I mean, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to do any dumb stuff at all. Even if it's not that as a category by itself. There's a bunch of other stuff. If somebody's like, we should play with these toys before we go into this meeting. No, that's dumb.
Oh, that's
Somebody's
not.
like, we should drink these drinks that we're obliged to have before we go in there. No, that's dumb. Let's just go do the thing. I'm not trying to do any of that.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's not. I'm not singling. I am, you know, dumb ideas are dumb everywhere I go, but I'm not trying to single them out if
Yeah.
it's, you know, but like religious, you
No,
know,
for
and
yeah, you know, you said you did debates. I don't know if you're on any like the social medias like TikTok, but there's a big TikTok debate space right now, especially between atheists and all the other mostly the Abrahamic religions, but all the other
I was gonna,
Abrahamic main ones.
is William Lane Craig still around?
William Lane Craig is still around. You know what I'm saying? He does.
I debated him.
You did okay, awesome.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, you know what? You should. Okay, here's story time, kids. So when I was in college, and I was sort of always breaking it up with Christianity in university, right? But one of the things that went on here was in Seattle is that there was an institution called the Discovery Institute, and they're a think tank. They're a Christian think tank. Are you familiar with them?
Oh my God, they are
They're
so
the
dishonest,
intelligent
bro.
design people, right?
They are so annoying.
I worked there. So when I was sort of in college, I took an internship there because a couple of people from my like the fundamentalist kids at my institution were working there, and I was like, let me see what's going on. Let me see what's going on because I wanted to talk with the guys. I wanted to talk with Densky. I wanted to talk with William Lane Craig. I wanted to talk with them, and then like maybe it's, you know, and I wasn't debating when I showed up, but I was like, oh, maybe we can have a conversation. Let me see what you guys are up to because intelligent design was like mysterious to from where I was at, right? So I was in, you know, sort of ancient languages and not in like how mousetraps work, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So I wanted to just go see what was up, and so I took an internship there. I worked there. I did talk to all those guys. I did debates with them. I did a bunch of political stuff, which is terrible, and
Mhm.
that was a very weird sort of experience. Nobody liked them. Nobody liked me when I emailed them from my like email address to them. People would be super sassy, and I was like, "Why am I doing this?" And it was terrible. I feel like people who go to like Liberty University. If you're a black and go to Liberty University, shout out to I shouldn't shout out to anybody, but I know somebody from the VA who's one of those, and like that's got to be hard. Like it's so tricky. It's so tricky. It's not coveted
Mhm.
where fancy stuff is, you know, and so
Yeah,
then
yeah.
private school kids are about that fancy thing. That's what they're trying to get to. So if you find yourself over in these like weird Christian spots, you
Mhm.
might get stuck. But
Yeah,
yeah,
you could.
it was a weird thing.
I got you. It's an interesting thing because William Lane Craig he's now doing more podcasts and big grand debate things because with me it all come down to this when you debate Christians like and I remember when I debated Christian for like an hour before it all came
Mhm.
down to this. I started to ask him, I'm like, listen, bro, you can come up with all the cute little arguments that you can. Can you actually demonstrate this to be true? Can you do that? It all
Yeah.
comes out to a yes or no. If you cannot, then you just justified my position. I have no reason to believe something that you can't show to be true. Yeah, I mean, now, yeah, of course they hit you back with the whole evolution thing. I'm like, I can show you evolution to be true easily. Just look at your hand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's all I can show. Look at your hand. Look at your thumb. Look at the fingerprint. The only other organisms that have that are chimpanzees, bonobos, orangutans, and gorillas. The only five that have this format. If we don't have a common ancestor, explain that. They
Yeah.
can't. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Yeah.
very easy to explain evolution. You see that right there is a demonstration. They can come. I can justify that too with genetics, with morphology, with biology, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. With the fossil record paleontology, geology. There's all these lines of evidence. You can't do that with the God. You just come up with a little argument of he exists outside of space and time and the law of identity and crap like that. It doesn't justify anything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think the reason why folks like William Lane Craig went more to doing podcasts and actually doing large debates is because people started noticing that. When they started to notice that, can you demonstrate this? Can you actually show it to be true? And he had to kind of admit that he can't.
Mhm.
Now you can't do those large debates. And of course, there's also apologetics still online. There's a guy named Darth Dawkins who's always around. Yeah, I mean, there's Darth Dawkins. There's a big one on TikTok named Q Top. But Q Top, he does the William Lane Craig argument of the maximally great, which is a very
Oh,
stupid argument. What does
okay.
maximally great even mean?
Yeah.
What does it even mean? It's a
Maximally
stupid
great.
argument. And that's the thing. Like the last time I ran into that argument, actually asked a person, what exactly does maximally great mean? Because it's
Yeah.
like asking me what is the greatest number. Because
Right.
if you tell me what the greatest number is, all I gotta do is add one. So any of the properties that you give to your maximally great, all I gotta do is add the stipulation that mine has a stick that can beat up yours, and now mine is greater. What do we do with that? It gets
Yeah.
nowhere. No, just like solipsism, it gets nowhere.
Pretty much, yeah. No, that's the challenge about metaphysics, right? So, like, as a philosopher, as a philosopher, I'm a pretty committed to like sort of minimalizing the sort of metaphysical things that I don't need, right? So, like things, and again, things like souls and spirits and stuff, I just don't need it. It's not a category for me. Good for them. Like, good for people who have that. It just doesn't work. But then, people make it very hard for themselves to sort of be in the world because of these kinds of things, and I don't know. It's just it's a silly challenge. And again, there's also some incoherence there related to like what they take the world to be and sort of what they're out there.
Yeah,
It's yeah, I don't know. It's easy to let it go.
let me this no, this interview was great. I love it. We just kind of went 20-minute tangents. You know what I'm saying? No, we
We're
kinda went
ripping it down
that
and
time,
we're
but I
like, this
love
is not like the other one.
yeah, yeah. No, I kind of nerded out on philosophy and history and politics. I'm sorry. But
No, all good.
I do think politics is important because I've always told people I understand that politics can be boring. It can be very boring. However, it's important to know about it because I think people are understanding that more and more now with everything going on in the world right now. So people are understanding that politics may be boring, but know about it. You know what I mean? So I wanted to ask you because this kind of goes into the last question that I always ask. The last question I always ask is like people are usually of two minds when it comes to the Black atheist community.
Mm,
The two minds are basically we should be, like I said, a little bit more aggressive, becoming vocal, getting out there, being activists. You know what I mean? And I do believe in that. But there are also
mhm,
people who say that we should be focusing on ourselves and building a community and a safe space for us
mhm.
because we don't have that. You know what I mean?
Right.
Now I'm of the mind that we can walk and chew gum. You know what I mean? Like we can build a safe space, which is why I built the Discord. I'm gonna tag that Discord in this video. Y'all better join. So that's why I built the Discord. That's why I created this channel. But I also do, debates on TikTok. I'm gonna be going live on this YouTube channel soon for me to do those debates as well. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? I want us to actually be active and be visible. I want to be a day where we go out with a tent and a table and mics in front of either what's the TD Jakes Potter House Church with a big sign that says there's no reason to believe in God. Convince me not. You know what I'm saying? Convince me of the opposite. And we sit out there and wait for those black people to come out. You know what I'm saying? To talk to us. There's gonna be people who don't want to talk to us, but there's gonna be people who are gonna want to talk to us. I want to do that one day. You know what I'm
I
saying?
feel
I
like
want
I feel like the most compelling person
to.
who could show up to that tent would be like somebody who shows up. I don't know. I'm thinking of a weird lady who shows up with an accordion and she plays you like a chord that you never heard before, but she'll play within her religious chords and suck you in with music because there's something over it, and that's the most magical thing we got, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
I hope whenever you set that up, I hope she comes to get you. Um, don't
Yeah,
succumb.
but
I'll come,
you
I'll be like, here's a book, get out of there.
yeah. But I wanted to ask, like, what do you think, for you, what would the path like is more comfortable be? I think we could walk it through gum. What would you think we should do?
It's a really, really I struggle with this. I struggle with this question, right? It can be because I don't know what the right answer is, and my preferences are super all over the place, right? On
Mhm.
the one hand, I'm grumpy that I have to pay taxes about shit I don't want to pay for, and like about paying for religious shit. I'm like, that's dumb. Can I get an exemption for that? Who do I have to call? I call the manager for that.
Mhm.
Um, and then I'm really, and then I know that, sort of, and then somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, I know that, you know, politics is a struggle, right? Like, 'cause you don't get what you want every single time, and you can push for it and push for it, and then a thing that I like about the current president is that like he changes stuff. Like he's like, all right, you know, last week he was like, "We're this is what we're up to," kind of about some random thing, and then like a thing happens, and then he'd be like, "Hey, Joe Biden, what about this thing? Can you do something about this?" And he'll be like, "All right, let me get in there," and he'll kind of like do that, like he doesn't win, he doesn't look, he's not the king of the world. Americans are kind of weird, we're egoistic about that, but he goes in and gets in kind of a space and does a thing. And like I like this is gonna be controversial, but I like Hillary Clinton for that too. She'll show up to any fight. I feel like if you call Hillary Clinton right now, and you're like, hey, I got a problem. I feel like she'd actually show up and
Yeah,
be like, I'll get in there. And like I'd be and like it doesn't, and I don't know what the outcome of that fight will be. Like I don't know where, whatever is going on there. But like somebody who like go do a thing. And it's in politics that's very hard and tricky because everybody doesn't get invited to the room, right? And you know this, like, right, working, sort of sort of in your studies of like how these things kind of go. And
mhm.
I'm not sure. And then there's also like stuff that I want where I'm like, why is this a problem that women cannot get like regular health care? Like, why are we having mifepristone as a challenge before the Supreme Court? Like, those are attorneys. Not one of them is a fucking physician. Who's like, who even in who they don't belong to that discussion. And they
Who
should
invited these niggas?
all the way up. Yeah, literally, I will, like, I've been coming up on, like, I'm gonna just email these motherfuckers from
Yeah.
my Columbia.edu email address and be like, what are you doing over there? It doesn't look like you make any kind of sense. Talking like an attorney about medicine. Would you like a lesson? I would like to invite you to a thing over where we're at and where some of you guys went to university to like talk about that. This is
Mhm.
medicine in serious people's lives. And you guys talk about words over there and you put people in jail and then you kill them pretty regularly in the United States. But like mostly you put people in jail and then like adjudicate laws. You do not adjudicate the lives of people on the everyday. And so
Mhm.
like I don't with politics, like don't come up on people's lives,
Mhm.
sort of like talk about the shared space, you know what I mean? Kind of thing. Like there's better ways of like politicking and like issues. Like let's build a road, let's do basic stuff. And I know that that it gets complicated. I'm not afraid of that, but like don't get out of like don't get in medicine. For sure,
Yeah.
don't get in medicine, lawyers. I'll have a problem about that. And then maybe don't get in other, sort of things too.
Mhm.
And maybe there's a question like, what is out of bounds for sort of politics, right?
Mhm.
And I think that's a question we've been sort of low key talking about the whole time when we talk about the First Amendment issues. Like people like, what's out of bounds for that? We can figure that out. But
Mhm.
there's other like stuff that's like not. It's not
Yeah,
for
exactly.
people who do that stuff. Yeah, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, I got you. Like, and that's exactly what when it comes to activism, especially secular activism, with the reason why I want to focus on if I become an activist, I want to focus on critical thinking and secularism
Mm.
is because those
Mhm.
are the things that affect black people to want some of the most. Because
Mm.
as black people, one thing I've seen when it comes to knowing about stats and politics and everything like that, we can be great, we can be amazing. But when it comes to hard sciences, you know what I'm saying? When it comes to not falling for conspiracy theories, holy shit, are we gullible? How
Who do you
many
want us to?
people how many people still believe Dr. Sebi cured AIDS? How many people still believe that? It's like it is amazing. You know what I mean? And it's like, y'all,
I mean,
think critically here. You know what I mean? Think
yeah.
critically here. The man never proved what he said. There are no court records for what y'all talking about. why do you believe this? It is still like I was like, it gives me a headache. And I was like, that's why I want to promote, like, as you know, black atheists, I want to promote critical thinking. You know what I mean? Like, I want to promote stuff like that because when COVID came around, the BS that went around the black community was incredibly stupid. And it's
You
like,
know, yeah, that was actually true. So I was in Mississippi when COVID started,
mhm,
and part of my job includes like literally, actually, my whole job is so like COVID's. So I was very face to face with sort of the making of vaccines and like the studies that were kind of going on, and like I was in Jackson. You know what I mean? Like I was, like at that time, and it was very I lived in two worlds. I've never lived a more schizophrenic sort of life, right? So like at work every day, it was like, here's the study, here's what we're gonna do, here's the vaccine, here's what it's gonna, and it looks like other vaccines that I've seen, and none of that looks like a problem. But in the world, people are like, it looks too fast. I've never seen this before. Blah 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 blah. And then a whole bunch of conspiracy stuff, and I was like, man, I can't even battle some of this stuff. But I would invite people to my work all the time. I'd be like, come to my office, like come hang out, walk
mhm,
around the office, like come see how this sausage gets made.
yeah,
Nobody ever has come to work with me. And close. I almost got some people. I'm not a very good evangelist, okay?
yeah,
But like that was a very real thing. I was like, I could literally show you how this whole thing works. And people would not come see that. And now I'm bitter where I'm like, hey, look, I don't come to your job and tell you that you're building that house wrong or that you're building that thing incorrectly.
mhm,
Would you like that? You know what I mean? Like, but that's sort of what you're sort of left with when you do this work. So
yeah, yeah,
vaccines are
exactly.
it's hard. Yeah.
And when it comes to like political analysis, which is some of the stuff that I do, it's kind of hard as well because you
Mm,
would have people who would because the thing is this is not a, like a really a hard science like that how you do. It's really a soft science. So you the only thing that you can do is like show people like if you take this action or you don't take this policy, this is what it ends up with. And then you have to see because politics has a long arm of history, you know what I'm saying? So when we talk about political analysis, for example,
mm,
redlining wasn't we didn't see it immediately until 50 years later. That's when we see the effects. So when I tell people like, listen, if you do this now, down the road, this is what you will see. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
It's hard for them to see that because most people are myopic. You know what I'm saying? We only see what's in front of us. But I've told people, I'm like, one of the things that I've seen in society before, like for example, a few years ago, I would say back in probably like in 2015, 2014, 2015, people started getting this like mentality of I'm a savage, being rude to people. You know what I'm saying? Being, I just tell the truth and I'm blunt. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. But I started telling people, I like, if y'all keep taking this path, it's gonna get to the point where people don't have empathy anymore, and it's going to
Mhm,
become a problem. And you're going to see it on the internet, and you're gonna see that when we need policies to pass for black people, you're gonna see people say that they know the policy needs to pass, but they don't give a shit because they have
mm.
no empathy for you. That was back in
It's
2014. I warned people about this. What are we
yeah,
seeing now? We're seeing what I said. You know what I'm saying? But people
yeah,
don't see that because we're myopic. You know what I'm saying? That's what makes politics harder than the hard stuff. With you, you can just say, "Come to my office and I'll show you it." With me, I gotta say, if you do this now, this was gonna happen 5 years from now. In five
yeah.
years, they have to wait the 5 years to actually see the results. You know?
Yeah. I got to be honest. I'm super cynical about about the sort of provoking the sympathies and empathies of Americans, sort of the rest of Americans from our perspective. Like, I live in white spaces, and I don't see the effects of like, I don't see some empathy from, I don't see more empathy about black things. Um, in my spaces than I do
Right.
about sort of other things, like about other LGBTQ stuff, for example, or sort of like, immigrants or sort of any of the plights of the other people. I don't see any of that. So I'm sort of cynical about like evoking people's sympathy about a
Right.
cause that I might sort of
Mhm.
want, right? And so and I think that's maybe sort of the challenge about like, why would I say something like, I'm actually pretty comfortable sort of laying low as the black atheist and like, why should people have eyes on us? Because I don't think that, because any of the things that we would be interested in sort of politically would be are impossible, probably, if
Mhm.
they're like actually sort of like for for us, by us kind of things.
Mhm.
And it's actually hard to say what any of those things might be, right? But they wouldn't be like, I for sure don't want to gatekeep. I don't want to build a community like that. What I want is for safe spaces for everybody. I have like, I'm kind of a world citizen. And I
Mhm.
don't know if the other black atheists feel like sort of, if they can sort of adopt world citizenry,
Mhm.
sort of as an idea or something like that. Maybe that's not even like the right one, but something like, look, I'm not just trying. I belong to the spaces where I belong, but and we manage it the way that we want to. But I'm not. But it's gonna change and outgrow me, and I'm gonna be old in like 20 minutes, and like it's gonna move past me, and like I'm preserved in that. I want to preserve its existence, but I don't want to preserve what it takes itself to be too much. I think it's fine as it is. Just being humanist
Mhm.
is good enough. Sort of being black and humanist, and knowing what our struggle is, and sort of just being in the spaces that we come from.
Mhm.
I don't know what it's going to be like for our kids. Maybe we can have some imagination for that. But like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to. I don't. But also, I don't want to be super tight and make like a. I don't want to make bylaws either.
No,
I hate
and the thing is, yeah, no, I got
bylaws.
you. And the thing is, like, I get it, right? Because that's something that I do understand that when black people become political and we become visible, we definitely become targets. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's especially for black people because once you are visible black person, you're gonna get threats. You know what I'm saying? And you know what's crazy about it is that I noticed that once you're a black person with a large platform, you cannot escape racism. You just can't.
Mm,
Because I
mm.
noticed this when there's a channel called Lovely Tea. I don't know if you know about that channel, but
I do not.
Lovely Tea, right? She's a YouTube channel. She does
Okay.
celebrity gossip. That's all she does.
Oh,
Celebrity gossip, entertainment news, talking about celebrities. That's it. That's all she does. She doesn't enter politics. She doesn't enter social conversations. She doesn't even talk about social conversations. None of that. She doesn't talk about the LGBTQ community. She doesn't talk about reparations. She talks about none of that. All she does is celebrity gossip. And this was a time where she has about a million subs now, but this was the time where
okay.
she only had about 250, right?
Okay.
At her time of only 250,000 subscribers, she said, "I wanna show y'all the emails I've been getting." Everything was a racist email, every single one of them. You know what I'm
Wow.
saying? And she does celebrity gossip. She doesn't do politics at all. Celebrity
Yeah.
gossip, that's it. So when I saw that, that's when I realized if I actually, because I do wanna work on having a bigger platform, but I realized something. If I do work on becoming a bigger platform, I'm not only gonna see racism from, Christian fascists. I'm gonna see racism from other white atheists as well. I'm gonna see it.
Mhm.
You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I noticed it with Lovely T, and I noticed it when I was on Facebook. There's a Facebook group called Christian versus Atheist Debate.
yeah. I'm in there.
Yeah. Do you see how they talk to the Nigerians in there? Now
Yeah, it's crazy.
The Nigerian Christians make some crazy arguments, but
Interesting.
they don't say that your
Mhm.
argument is crazy because it's Christian fundamentalists. They say
Yeah.
your argument is crazy because you are Nigerian. And
Right, right.
once I saw that, that's when I realized, yeah, I'm gonna run into a lot of racism when if I get a bigger platform. So I get it.
Yeah.
But the only reason I'm willing to do it is because I'm doing this for black people. You know what I'm saying? Because I want us to have a better, like, critically think about these things. I don't want people to necessarily leave their religions. I want them
Mm.
to think about it more. You know what I'm saying? Because we don't have a black William Lane Craig. We don't have that. The most we have is TD Jakes, and he's just gonna tell you to pray to Jesus anyway. You know what I'm saying?
No,
So
they can call me up anytime. If there's no position for that. That's not even a job
exactly.
that anybody can have. But if anybody could have that job, call me up.
Mhm.
And I know like maybe one or two other people who could probably do it. But like, no, for real, I would have that discussion. I would have it in a very formal, hardcore sort of philosophical way. I do not play about my craft.
Mhm.
Um, if like I'm imprecise here, but like I do not play about arguments in that space. Man, ask ladies, dudes. It's very easy, actually.
Very easy. Yeah, very easy.
Yeah,
That's what I said, man. If we get a big platform like the Horseman had, like I said, we'll
yeah,
call it the cookout. Yeah, I mean it'll
yeah,
be me, you, and
yeah,
7 other people. We'll call it the cookout. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying?
yeah. No, we could, and I'll just cover. And here's the thing: like when I talked to William Lane Craig, we had a discussion about his cosmological argument, right? And I'm a philosopher, physics person,
Mhm,
and yeah. So like actually, so Sean, who's that what's that dude's name, Sean Carroll, right?
mhm.
So he actually has a better version of the same kind of argument that I had, or the same sort of discussion that I had with William Lane Craig. You can check that out or whatever, but like, yeah, I don't like that talking we're talking about reality.
Yeah.
But yeah. No. But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
no. A good look for the good luck for the the political side. That's such a challenge though. I mean, here's one thing I would say, something like this. Whatever you craft as your message, I would say something like I would just say build in something like it may not go well the first little bit while we're going at it, and so we just have to go at it for a little bit, right? And I feel like that's a kind of a larger ask compared to sort of other kinds of things, but it's gonna take a little bit of time. If you want to sort of land on maps and radars, you can't just like sneak on there unless you're like one of the specialists. You know what I mean? Like if you got a special talent, I mean, maybe you do like whatever. Like if you can get big names to do something like that, maybe there's a way to slide on these people's radars. But like I think there's if you want to do a social thing, it's got to be a push, and I hope that I think people are down for that, kind of thing, and I think that's the ask.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and and that's what I want to do. I'm actually planning on reacting to more videos, but a lot of people have already reacted to like the apologists and stuff like that. I want to react to black church videos. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Black church
mm,
videos when it's about witchcraft and you're only leaving because your church hurt and stuff like that. That's the
yeah.
people I wanna discuss things with the black people. You know what I'm saying? We've already talked to white people plenty of times. I want to talk to
You want to
black
see
people.
TD Jakes and be like, man, do you got wheels on the bottom of your shoes, bro? How do you walk
Yeah,
like that?
how do you
All
do
right.
that? You know what I'm saying? How exactly do I get swallowed up? You know what I'm saying?
What would you say to him? Like, what's your question for him? Like, that's a funny dude, right? Because he's good. What would you ask TD Jenks if you could right now? Like, what would be your like question? What would be the sparker of your discussion?
I would probably ask, why do you think it's important for this would be a question for all big black preachers because they kind of promote this. They always promote that being a Christian or believing in Jesus as a central tenet to being a balanced person. And I would
Mm,
always ask, why do you believe that? Because there
mm,
are plenty of people who are balanced, who are not part of your religion, who are not part of any religion, and they're still moral, they're still balanced, they're still perfectly fine people. Why do you believe that only Jesus is the way to find that? You know what I'm saying?
yeah,
Because like I was able to find that without Jesus. Matter of fact, I'm a more balanced person now than I was when I believed. So why is this the only way you believe is the way to be a better person? Because
yeah,
he's written plenty of self-help books, but all of them are stuck into like being a religious person. And I'll always ask, why do y'all think that? Because
mhm,
it doesn't seem necessary. It's not necessary for me. It's necessary for the 1 billion Muslims out there for them to believe in Jesus. So
yeah,
why do you think it's necessary for black people or for us?
yeah.
You know?
That's a really good. That's actually really nice. That's a really it's subtle, but I really appreciate the like, there's other people out here, right? Sort of ness of that, like it really, and I especially when I think through about my Hindu friends, right? So that I know a good amount of Indians and I know some Punjabis too, and they're not that, but my sort of polytheist friends have this like really great uh, sort of um, sort of non-adherence to the magical world because they have a lot of options, and
Yeah.
like. And I think that it would be very nice for just sort of culturally for Christianity to be like, there's other people here too, and like to have that about them, and they for sure do not. And same, actually, none of the Abrahamics do. They don't appreciate any of the other people.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And another thing I would ask them because it's like these are our mega church pastors, right? I understand that there are taxes you still gotta pay. There are things like that. The church finances are a lot more complicated than we think. We get it.
Right.
I understand it. But I would always tell people that I would also tell them that there are tangible things that can happen. Yeah, I mean, there are very tangible things that can happen with the power that you have. It
Mm,
doesn't seem to be happening to the people that need it the most. They've
mm,
always only heard to plant a seed with their tithe, and none of it is happening. I've seen it with my own family, with my mother, with my sisters, planting tithes for years and financially struggling. It doesn't seem that your theology works. You know what I'm saying? So, what is something else tangible that you can actually do for these people instead of telling them to just give you money? You
yeah.
know,
And I
that's
feel and yeah, no, I like that. Yeah, same. The response is going to be some version of like, well, my friend Lucy, or like maybe not my friend. I met a woman named Lucy, and they tell you a story about it, how she got successful, right? They're going to be
yeah,
like, that's how you do. And you're right though, but you're exactly right. And it's not like you could pitch like a statistic to them, which is like, here's a whole bunch of them. Actually, I do know that girl, or and everybody else. Like you couldn't. There's not. That's what's hard about that crowd is that they don't seem to be have the capacity to hear um more than the one-off that works for their life, right? And what does that say about their life? What does that say about their opinion and what they think, kind of stuff. And it's kind of I hate that for them because they're so charismatic. They have all this other like something that people like about them, but they fucking don't get shit. They're so dumb.
Yeah, exactly.
Pastors
And
are dumb.
the thing is that
Show me a smart pastor. Look,
it's just like how
bring
you
a
were
smart
saying.
pastor over here to science where I have questions.
Exactly, and and just like how you were saying, like they only see what works for them. That's technical
Yeah,
sharpshooter fallacy. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It's technical sharpshooter fallacy because it's like you see all the hits, but you're ignoring the misses. And I've actually told my sister that before. I'm like, you're seeing all the hits, but you're a miss, and you're
yeah,
not, and you're not accepting that you're a miss. It's not working for you. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
so it's like, why don't you just do something else? Don't just go into a sermon when you keep hearing all these other people get rich and you're waiting for it to be your turn. There's not a
yeah,
line here. There's not a line for you to come up. You know what I mean? You gotta do something else. That's just point blank. Period. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I think that's the questions that I would ask them. But that first question I think is the most important one. Why do you
I think so
believe
too.
that
Yeah,
this is so important for specifically black people to have? Because I don't
yeah,
even want to talk about everybody else. Because that's another thing that I don't like them. They like to go colorblind once you talk about the community itself. Because I will tell them like, this has some of these things have damaged the community itself, and then they'll go colorblind and be like, "Oh, this is for all human beings." No, 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 no. We're talking about
yeah,
black
yeah,
people. We're talking about us.
right,
You know what I'm saying? Why is this important for us? Yeah, I
yeah.
mean, like, I don't care
And
about why it's important for Joel Osteen and his ilk. Why is it important for TD Jakes and his parishioners and Creflo Dollar and his parishioners? Why is it important for us? You know?
every time I meet a very fancy Christian, I ask them about slavery. Every single time, I do it in
Slavery.
the face. Every single time, I ask them in the face. I have no scruples about asking that question about Christians who take this things very, very seriously, and they're like the bigger kids. I ask them about slavery and what they think is going on, and they're really shitty about it. They never do a good job. I have like a pretty canned answer about it. I'd be like, yeah, yeah. You mean like I'd be like, yeah, that was going on then. It's not great. Um, sorry about that. Some
Mhm,
version of that. Like that's much more soothing than like every other version of it that those
mhm,
people who take us very seriously have to offer. And it's not supposed to be great. And like that's fine, right? The Catholics actually do a pretty good job. If you ask a Catholic priest who's like one of the wine drinkers, the day wine drinkers, the
mhm,
cardinals or whatever, they'll give you a good answer about it, right? They'll say that. And they'll be like, I'm sorry about it too. And like that's where I learned that.
mhm,
What I mean? Like, you can get it from somewhere. But it's not like the American versions of these people. And it's just kind of a bummer, especially in like TD Jakes. If I'd be like, what do you think, bro?
mhm. No, I would ask
You're
the
a
same
descendant
question.
just like me. I mean, I'm
Yeah,
a descendant. So, I
exactly.
assume he is too.
I would ask the same question.
Yeah.
I'd be like, yo, if you're on this part of the world and you didn't come from the mother continent, you're a descendant of slaves. So I asked him the same thing too. I would ask, where was Jesus during slavery? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
because like we were not Christian before we came over here. So if Jesus is blessing us all this time and he's still intervening, why
Yeah.
not intervene then during the most traumatic time for our people? Like what why is the reason for that? Why do we need that? You know what I'm saying? And if you're gonna say because the answers I've usually gotten is either they deflect, they say, "Oh, that was a time in the past. I don't care about that anymore." Like that's all good and well, but it affects us now because the only reason you're Christian because our ancestor was a slave who became Christian. But
Yeah.
it's important to answer because you claim that God, Jesus, or whatever, they're intervening with us now. So if they were intervening with us now, why didn't do it back then? If your answer is they want us to get close to Jesus, I'm like, why did it take 400 years for that to happen? It could have happened in 10. So why
Right.
wasn't slavery only 10 years instead of 100? Then they're gonna go with the whole free will thing. Yeah,
Right.
cool, free will, right? Okay, but God could have still said to not do this, but in Leviticus he said that you can. So
Mhm.
it still doesn't answer the question, you know what I mean? And it's one of those things where like I would love to talk to them about it and see how they respond. But of course, I have to get like 50,000 subscribers on this channel, and I look like this, so it's gonna be hard to do. You
Just
know,
email him and be like, just email his secretary and be like, hey, lady,
that was
can
the
I
thing
get
I
hours?
wanted
Can I
to.
get hours? That's how
That's the
you
thing I
deal with
wanted
no
to.
love.
Exactly. That's the thing I
Like,
want to bring up. You know, what I mean, a lot of the educators and the YouTubers who are white and they're atheists, they have huge platforms. The black ones are stuck at like 1,000, 2,000.
mm,
It's really weird. You know what I mean? I want us to have a way bigger platform than what we have. It's been a struggle
yeah,
for me to even get 200 subscribers. So it's like we got to get up
I'm
there.
pretty sure. I'm pretty sure you've topped out. I'm pretty sure it's just 1,000 of us and not anymore. I'm pretty sure and probably 300 of those are white people who are lurkers. It's just that's all of us.
Mhm,
We're not a big community. I'm just kidding.
mhm,
I don't know. That's a hard one. That's a hard one. I think about that sometimes. Like I don't never build platforms, but I wonder how people sort of do that and what does that look like for them and what do you got to do, right?
yeah, exactly.
And that's a challenge. You're like, what are you gonna like? What are you gonna do?
Mhm. Yeah, what are you gonna do? I mean, I would love to have, 300,000, 400,000 subscribers right now. I'll love to add that because, not only could I, be doing this full time, which would be great, but
Okay, yeah, yeah.
I would also have a big enough platform to actually do some sort of activism that I actually want to do. Yeah, you feel what I'm
Mhm,
saying? So
mhm.
that's what I would do with it. I
Yeah.
would do the same thing that you're talking about, talk to actual preachers and stuff like that, have the discussions and have those debates with them because I do want to do something called 1v1 one day when I'm just talking to somebody. You feel what I'm saying? So
Okay.
all right,
Yeah.
Chris.
I think you should start with prank. I think you should start a prank war. I'm pretty sure you can get a bunch of subscribers by starting a prank war with some of the preachers. Something nice, nothing weird, just like a little toilet papering of their like dog. They're out with the dog. You walk around and toilet paper the dog while they're just and something like that. Something I don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole change my mind thing where I'll go out with the tent with a table and a mic, and I'll tell them to there is no good reason to believe in God. Change my mind, and I'll sit
Yeah,
out there and wait for someone to come up to me. Yeah, that would. I
a
mean,
man's gonna walk up to you and bear spray you.
yeah, exactly. Or I could do street epistemology, yeah, or street epistemology, and
Yeah,
just
yeah.
ask people what they believe and
Is
why.
that the
Because
go-to?
that is the thing that I want to do on this channel. I want to start going live on this channel with a panel of
Yeah,
people, and call it the Black Heathen Show. I put that in the group chat. You saw it, so
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
start doing that soon. So, but
Okay.
Chris, it has been an hour and a half. I do gotta do some things. The
My
Listen,
gosh.
I loved it. All right, because we did go off in the tangent 3 times, which is fine. I'm good with that.
The whole thing was a tangent.
Yeah,
That's all
whole
I'm
thing was a tangent. Yeah, I was saying this was supposed to be an interview
saying.
with. I also
Yeah.
have prepared questions, but I love nerding out on politics. I love nerding out on philosophy. I love it. You know what I'm saying? So, but if you have any business or anything to promote or any platform to promote, go ahead and do it now so that people can follow you, and I will tag it in the description. Go ahead.
Yeah. Here's what I want you guys to do. Go get vaccinated. Get your RSV. If you're over 50, get your shingles. Go get a vasectomy. If you're not having any more kids, just get out the game. Stop. Tubal ligations aren't fun for anybody. Just go get that. It's super fun. What else? What else? Oh, puberty blockers are also a treatment for prostate cancer. So, like, whoever's on that team, just let them know that. That's the same drug, by the way. That's a real thing. What else do I want to promote? Don't be addicted to voting. Vote. Don't withhold. Like, that's just weird. I mean, I'll get it. Protest. Let's do better protests than withholding votes.
Mhm.
Bring matches and gasoline to stuff. Also, keep pushing down them white supremacy statues. What else? Am I missing anything? Oh, Mr. Priestone, seriously, let women have their fucking drugs so they can take care of themselves, please. God damn. That's how about that? I don't
All
have an
right,
email.
all right, no, not a problem.
All
Hey,
right, Ben. It's
thank
super
you
fun
so
talking with you. Thanks so much.
Hey,
This was fun.
this was super fun, man. I appreciate you being here. This will
Yeah,
drop in about 2 or 3 weeks, and I
great.
appreciate it. Love it. Thank you very much. Please join the Discord, and I'll see you later. All right, brother.
Cheers. Unhinged.
Cheers.
Peace.